You're a boxing champ, Golden Gloves. What did you learn from boxing? Other than just getting off the canvas. I heard you, no, not to say that you were on the canvas a lot, but you know.
Oh, I was down there a few times. I learned from boxing, I don't like to get hit.
Okay, that's okay.
Boxing is great in the sense that it teaches you self-discipline. It's about achievements. It's about, most people first walk into a ring or into a gym, they couldn't hit a bag for 30 seconds without being exhausted. And they could have these big, strong arms. They could be runners. They could be great athletes in other sports. But achieving so that you can hit this bag for now 5 or 6 rounds at 3 minutes a round, that is an achievement. To go into the ring with boxing gloves on, and I can guarantee you, most people are surprised they can't last 30 seconds if you put pressure on them. But as time progresses, your body becomes more adjusted, and you gain that endurance through hard work. And it shows you can do anything if you work hard. That's what boxing did for me. People think boxers are dumb. This is the public persona, and I'll tell you why. Because most boxers come from the projects, and they're not educated. But they're not stupid. They're just not educated, so they don't know how to use these big words like politicians and lawyers and you know, and corporate bigwigs. But they're smart because they get in the ring and they're thinking all the time. The smart ones. Muhammad Ali was an extremely smart thinker. Bernard Hopkins, very smart. Floyd Mayweather, he just so super smart.
Oscar De La Hoya.
Oscar De La Hoya, I mean, the list goes on. Sugar Ray Leonard, one of the smartest of all time. Boxers are good thinkers in the ring. The good ones think. And I take that from boxing. But boxing's a metaphor for life with me. It's when you get knocked down, get back up and get into the fight if you want to be successful.
And train well before you get into the ring. Train, always train.
A game plan.
Know your playing plan.
You have to have a game plan. Every fighter fights different. Muhammad Ali always had a game plan. I watched Muhammad Ali. I talked with him many times, interviewed him. We'd become friends in the 60s when he came to Toronto, and I did some traveling with him and did a lot of events with him. And he would study fighters for days, him and Angelo Dundee, videos. It was called a game plan. And in life, when you're pursuing a career, it's more than just say, hey, I know I want to get in radio. Because I wanted to get in radio at 10 years old.
Is that right?
But I didn't have a game plan. And I didn't understand that, well, so do 10 million other people want to get into radio. Every failed athlete wants to be a sportscaster.
That's right.
Or you want to be a music jock, or you got political pundits say, I want to be talk show hosts. And there has to be a plan. You have to have a game plan, because if you have no education, as I didn't at the time, I dropped out of school at 15, a very stupid move, because I didn't understand the competition out there is just intensely incredible.
You guys, and this was back in the 60s. Today it's even worse, you guys. To get a job, man, you need a minimum of 4 years. You just have to go to university, get your trade or something, but you got to go to school and stay in school until you become proficient in what you do. And that takes a game plan. Know what you're doing, right?
Part of that, yeah, you're absolutely right, Al. And part of that game plan is you have to be able to socialize. You have to be able to connect. Internships, volunteer work, making contacts all the time. It's who you know to go along with it. Because I tell you, it's not easy, especially in the entertainment industry, as you know. And I finally got my first job in radio when I was in my late 30s. But I've had a tremendous run, and
there's more to come.
Well, there's more to come. Yes, I mean, the movie and another book.
Okay, now let's talk about that book for a moment. The book is called, the first book you've written,
Out of the Darkness.
Out of the Darkness. And tell us a little bit about that book.
Well, just a book I wrote because I've been a motivational speaker since about 1993. And wherever I go, I share my story of growing up Windsor and then Detroit during the time of Detroit's homicide rampage. And I talk about all the people I've met over the years and interviewed, and you should write a book, you should write a book. I mean, how does a guy learn how to speak in front of thousands of people when you had no esteem growing up? So I finally sat down, and over a few years I wrote the book, Out of the Darkness, never believing I would finish it. You never learn, you learn so much about yourself writing a book, but I did finish it. never believing that it would be published, but I was turned down by about 30 publishers, and then ECW Press took the book, published it, and it became a #1 seller. Not once, not a 3-time #1 seller, bestseller, I should say. Not #1, but bestseller. So and now they're just completing all the negotiations for the movie of the book. So I mean, you know, I believe that as long as you're living, you got to keep giving, and as long as you're breathing, you got to keep believing. A dream never dies.
All right, so who's the lucky guy who plays Spider Jones? Who's the guy in the movie?
We're talking to you. Is my lawyer got back on the negotiations
Hey,
yet?
you ain't me. I'm going to be the trainer. I'm going to be Angelo Dundee guy. Okay, I'm going to shave. Oh, I don't even. Angelo had more hair than I do anyway. So the next book, where you're talking the next book.
Next book is pretty much done, but I'm just doing some editing on it. It's called The Predator Within, which talks about a psychological predator that invades your mind and builds its lair, and it robs you of your confidence, your esteem, and fills your mind with all these venomous, negative thinking ways. And that's why so many people today do not reach their full potential. They can be as creative and they can be as talented, but all this conflict in their head and listening to everybody else tell them what they can't be. You see a lot of that, especially in social housing and in areas where there's low income. People are constantly complaining, and they probably have every right about, but the kids here, oh, the man's gonna close the door on you. You ain't never gonna get a shot. They're racists out there. They give you 100 excuses. Kids begin to give up if they're not around the right environment, surrounded by supportive people. It gets into their head. I talk about that in the book and what happened to me and how it happened to many of my friends and what goes on among a lot of the young people I talk to today from these areas. They really are negative. I had a girl last week, oh, I suck at everything, I suck at everything. Beautiful 13-year-old girl, so much charisma. And everybody loves her. And I said, and you're not, you don't suck at everything. Stop it. And so these kind of things that, you know, I want to see. She's become one of my special proteges now. I want to see her rise to be a lawyer, a doctor. You know, there are means out there, but they need to be support.
That's right.
A good support system.
The expectations and a plan to get there. A lot of people don't know how to get from point A to point B. How do I get that job? You want to be a lawyer, this is what you have to do. If you want to do this, is what you have to do.
I have an old saying, if you don't know what you're doing, ask somebody.
That's right.
Don't let pride be your evil master, because that's what happened to me. It took me so many years. I wouldn't. And I was in a very narrow-minded, I don't want to sound like, but white bread business. Narrow-minded. Even in the business now, in talk show host, there's very few people of color or women that are talk show hosts. Usually upper middle class guys from university. You don't see people of color. I was in the talk radio business for many years, and there's still a lot of work to be done there. And on the other hand, I fight at that too. I fight for opportunities. In my community, in my drop-in center, I've got white kids, black kids, I've got Asian children, I've got Filipino kids, and they're all treated there with the same respect and racial harmony, because that's the world we live in. And so I don't care where a kid comes from, I care where they're going.
That's good.
And we need to break down these barriers that are there, but when they're denied, it makes it more difficult.
Now I want to talk one last thing before we end this interview.
Yep.
Your music. What kind of music?
R&B. R&B from the 50s right up to the 80s. We do everything from Motown to Earth, Wind and Fire, Kool and the Gang. We've got a band. A couple of the kids in my band are just out of Humber College.
Wow.
I got a very mixed band that's reflective of the city we live in. So I've got girls, guys, white, black, Filipino in my band. It's called Spider Jones in the Fabulous Web, and we bring the nitty-gritty back to the city.